Hello everyone, you're welcome back to AsorockvibesTV, and in today's video we'll be looking at the top 10 poorest countries in Africa 2023 by nominal GDP per capita. And like I've always said countless times on this channel, no country in Africa is poor, because every country on this continent is richly blessed with natural resources. As for me, any country that is poor is either being oppressed by superpowers, governed by extremely corrupt leaders, or ravaged by war and terrorism. Elite corruption is also a very big issue in Africa. Without wasting much of your time, here are the top 10 poorest countries in Africa 2023, according to International Monetary Fund and World Bank. The number 10th poorest country in Africa 2023 is Chad. Chad is a Central African country with a population of 16.43 million people, a nominal GDP of $10 billion and a GDP per capita of $659.3 according to the World Bank. Chad has a mixed economic system in which much of the population relies on subsistence farming and livestock, but private sector development depends on foreign capital. Chad is one of the poorest countries in the world and has the lowest life expectancy of all countries as at 2017. The life expectancy of a Chadian was found to be only 50.6 years, and also only 10% of the country's total population have access to the internet. The number 9 poorest country in Africa 2023 is Malawi. Malawi is an East African country with a population of about 19 million, a nominal GDP of $12 billion and a GDP per capita of $636 according to the World Bank. The economy of Malawi is predominantly agricultural, and 80% of the people live in rural areas. The country's poor economic performance has historically been constrained by policy inconsistency, microeconomic instability, poor infrastructure, rampant corruption, high population growth, and poor health education that limits labor productivity. And also, only 15% of the country have access to the internet. The number 8 poorest country in Africa 2023 is Liberia. Liberia is a country located in Western Africa with a population of 5.2 million, a GDP of $3 billion and a GDP per capita of $632.9 according to the World Bank. The economy of Liberia is highly underdeveloped, largely due to First Civil War, which began in 1989 and lasted for about 7 years. Ebola virus also affected their economy. According to the United Nations, Liberia is one of the poorest and least developed countries in the world, and also only 22% of the total population uses the internet. The number 7th poorest country in Africa 2023 is Niger. Niger is a Western African country with a population of 20 million, a nominal GDP of about $14 billion and a GDP per capita of $567.7 according to the World Bank. Niger is located in the Sahel, has a poorly diversified economy, with agriculture accounting for 40% of its GDP. And in 2021, more than 10 million of the country's citizens, which is 50% of the population, were found to be living in extreme abject poverty, and also only 10% of the country's population uses the internet. The number 6 poorest country in Africa 2023 is the Democratic Republic of Congo. DR Congo is a country located in Central Africa with a population of 90 million, a nominal GDP of $50 billion and a GDP per capita of $544 according to the World Bank. The Democratic Republic of the Congo is one of the most populous countries in Africa and one of the poorest. Nearly 3 in 4 people live in less than $1.90 per day, representing one of the largest populations in the world living in extreme poverty. The Democratic Republic of the Congo is considered to be the richest country in the world in terms of natural resources. Its untapped deposits of raw minerals are estimated to be worth over $30 trillion, but the country is on this list of the poorest countries due to poor leadership, war, insurgency and corruption. And also only 12.5% of the total population of this country uses the internet. Fifth poorest country in Africa 2023 is Sierra Leone. Sierra Leone is a Western African country with a population of 8 million, a nominal GDP of $4 billion and a GDP per capita of $509.4 according to the World Bank. Sierra Leone has a largely traditional economy in which majority of the population engages in subsistence agriculture, and direct government involvement in economic activity limits private sector development. Sierra Leone is so poor due to extreme government corruption, a lack of established education system, absence of civil rights, and poor infrastructure. And also only 17% of the country's total population uses the internet. The fourth poorest country in Africa 2023 is Madagascar. Madagascar is an East African country with a population of 28 million people, a GDP of $13.72 billion and a GDP per capita of $500 according to the World Bank. Majority of people from Madagascar lives in extreme poverty. At the moment, over 75% of the country's citizens live on less than $1.90 a day. The COVID pandemic put a brake on Madagascar's 4 years of economic growth. Manufacturing, mining, and services were hardest hit because of containment measures, and also only 15% of the country's total population have access to the internet. The third poorest country in Africa 2023 is the Central African Republic. The Central African Republic, as the name implies, is a country located in Central Africa with a population of 5 million, a GDP of $2.3 billion and a GDP per capita of $492.8 according to the World Bank. The Central African Republic is very poor and heavily dependent upon multilateral foreign aid and the presence of numerous NGOs which provide a lot of services which the government fails to provide. Economic mismanagement, poor infrastructure, a limited tax base, scarce private investment, and adverse external conditions have led to deficits in both its budget and external trade, and also only 4% of the country's population uses the internet. The number 2 poorest country in Africa 2023 is Mozambique. Mozambique is a country in the southeast coast of Africa with a population of 31 million, a nominal GDP of $14 billion and a GDP per capita of $448.5 according to the World Bank. Mozambique has high risk associated with corruption, which is a pervasive problem in the country. The country also fares poorly on financial transparency and standards. According to reports, over 60% of people in Mozambique live in extreme poverty, and also only 15% of the total population have access to the internet. And the poorest country in Africa 2023 is Burundi. Burundi is a country in Eastern Africa with a population of 11.8 million, a nominal GDP of $3.3 billion and a GDP per capita of $239. Burundi is so poor due to extreme elite corruption and conflict. Burundi's economy is heavily dependent on agriculture, and there's also an almost non-existence of industrialization. About 80% rely on farming to meet their food needs. Due to the average of 448 people per mile in Burundi and the average annual population growth of 3%, the amount of farming land available is extremely limited, reducing the total capacity of food production. And also, only a shocking 5% of the total population of Burundi have access to the internet. Thank you so much for watching this video till the end. You are the best. I really feel for people from these countries because I don't know how they survive, seeing how low their GDP per capita is. I'm from Nigeria, a low-income country with a nominal GDP per capita of around $2,500. A person from Nigeria is supposed to have a standard of living 5 times better than somebody from a country with a per capita income of $500. But then I know how things are difficult in my country, so I'm just trying to imagine how things will be for people in these countries. But notwithstanding, you cannot judge Africa's economy by the European or American standard. I'm sending love and light to everyone, and hopefully one day in the nearest future you will have good leaders in your country who will be able to manage your resources effectively and focus on human capital development without being selfish. It won't be easy, but I think with collective effort it can come to pass. That is why we all need to participate in electing our leaders. The success of the superpowers of today did not come overnight. It all started from good leadership. Shout out to everyone who watched this video from the beginning to the end. Please drop your thoughts in the comment section. I will reply all of them. And also please subscribe and turn on post notification. I'm working on mind-blowing videos you won't want to miss. God bless Nigeria, God bless Africa, and God bless the world at large. Peace, I'm out.